Her dress was still hanging in the closet. The black one with the slit up the side. The one she spent an hour twirling in front of the mirror for, just 2 days ago, asking if it looked too elegant for a work event. I hadn't touched it. It was swaying slightly from the fan, like it was mocking me. On the bed, her note sat folded. Not some romantic apology, no lipstick kiss on the edge, just a post-it from a hotel notepad that read, "Went early. Don't wait up. Went early. 3 days early. 3 days before our anniversary weekend. 3 days before I was going to surprise her with the same room we stayed in on our wedding night. 3 days before she was supposed to be in this house, with me. Instead, she was at a corporate retreat with her boss, a man I'd never met, but whose name lived in our kitchen more than I did lately. I wish I could say I saw it coming. I wish I could say there were signs. But the truth is, I thought we were okay. Not perfect. Not glowing. But okay. We had leftovers and reruns, and that one inside joke about the dentist receptionist who always wore Crocs with rhinestones. That felt like something, right? Now I was just standing in the hallway like an idiot, staring at a dress that hadn't even made it into her suitcase. And I realized then, she left in a different outfit. A new one. One I didn't recognize. So I did what any sad, paranoid, aching husband would do. I opened her drawer. And inside, where her travel-size perfume bottles used to be, was a receipt. A boutique hotel. Not the one the company uses. Not the one from the itinerary she emailed me by mistake. This was somewhere else entirely. In the city. 1 room. 2 guests. 1 night. Last Friday. The date she said she was working late. I should have burned it. Or flushed it. Or laughed at myself and said I was being ridiculous. Instead, I sat on the floor with that receipt in my hand, and I whispered something that sounded like, "Please, no." It didn't stop anything. It was already happening. And our anniversary was still 3 days away. Her dress was still hanging in the closet. The black one with the slit up the side. The one she spent an hour twirling in front of the mirror for, just 2 days ago, asking if it looked too elegant for a work event. I hadn't touched it. It was swaying slightly from the fan, like it was mocking me. On the bed, her note sat folded. Not some romantic apology, no lipstick kiss on the edge, just a post-it from a hotel notepad that read, "Went early. Don't wait up. Went early. 3 days early. 3 days before our anniversary weekend. 3 days before I was going to surprise her with the same room we stayed in on our wedding night. 3 days before she was supposed to be in this house, with me. Instead, she was at a corporate retreat with her boss, a man I'd never met, but whose name lived in our kitchen more than I did lately. I wish I could say I saw it coming. I wish I could say there were signs. But the truth is, I thought we were okay. Not perfect. Not glowing. But okay. We had leftovers and reruns, and that one inside joke about the dentist receptionist who always wore Crocs with rhinestones. That felt like something, right? Now I was just standing in the hallway like an idiot, staring at a dress that hadn't even made it into her suitcase. And I realized then, she left in a different outfit. A new one. One I didn't recognize. So I did what any sad, paranoid, aching husband would do. I opened her drawer. And inside, where her travel-size perfume bottles used to be, was a receipt. A boutique hotel. Not the one the company uses. Not the one from the itinerary she emailed me by mistake. This was somewhere else entirely. In the city. 1 room. 2 guests. 1 night. Last Friday. The date she said she was working late. I should have burned it. Or flushed it. Or laughed at myself and said I was being ridiculous. Instead, I sat on the floor with that receipt in my hand, and I whispered something that sounded like, "Please, no." It didn't stop anything. It was already happening. And our anniversary was still 3 days away. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up on the floor with the hotel receipt clenched in my hand until my fingers went numb. The fan kept spinning above me, humming in that low, lazy way that made the silence even louder. I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours, my mind trying to rearrange reality into something less humiliating, less cruel. But it didn't work. The math wouldn't add up unless I accepted the truth. She lied. Not just a white lie, not just a miscommunication, but something intentional, strategic. Something that reeked of guilt. Around 4 a.m., something broke in the bathroom. A sharp crack. Maybe a shampoo bottle fell in the shower. Maybe a shelf slipped loose. I didn't even check. I just sat there, letting the sound echo through the house like a warning shot. It felt symbolic in a pathetic kind of way. By sunrise, I was dressed and out the door. I didn't know where I was going at first. I drove aimlessly, past our favorite bakery, past the dog park we used to walk through when we still talked in the mornings, past the old bookstore where she once kissed me between the mystery and romance aisles. Everything reminded me of her, but none of it felt like mine anymore. I ended up in the parking lot of her office building, hands trembling on the steering wheel. I told myself I wasn't going to spy, that I just needed clarity, closure, something other than this rotting feeling in my gut. The building was quiet, too early for a Saturday, but her car wasn't in its usual spot. And then I saw it, a silver Lexus I didn't recognize, parked right where she usually parked. Out-of-state plates. Window cracked open. I waited. 10 minutes. Then 15. Just as I was about to convince myself to leave, the lobby door swung open. She walked out, wearing the dress I didn't recognize. She wasn't alone. He was taller than me, of course. He had that polished, expensive look, like he wore moisturizer and didn't sweat. His hand was on her lower back in that familiar way, like it belonged there. She wasn't pulling away. She wasn't laughing nervously. She was smiling, wide, eyes lit, like the woman I used to come home to. They didn't see me. Or maybe they did and didn't care. Either way, I didn't stay. I peeled out of that lot faster than I should have, heart slamming so hard against my ribs it felt like punishment. I didn't know where I was going, only that I needed to be anywhere but there. I ended up at my brother's place. I hadn't talked to Marcus in months. Not since the stupid Thanksgiving argument about politics and how I always let people walk all over me. But when he opened the door and saw my face, he didn't ask any questions. He just stepped aside and said, "Damn, Howie. Come in." I didn't cry. Not yet. That came later, when I told him what I saw. When I showed him the receipt. When I admitted I didn't have proof of anything other than her absence, her silence, and her sudden allergy to our anniversary. He said something I still can't get out of my head. "You're not crazy. You're just the last person to accept what everyone else already suspects." And that shattered me, because I realized even my silence had been screaming for weeks, and I had ignored it. Marcus tried to convince me not to go back to the house. He poured me a whiskey at 11 a.m. No ice, just raw and sharp, and said, "Whatever you think she's going to say, it won't be what you want to hear." But I couldn't stay in his guest room like a wounded animal, licking my wounds while she danced around Napa or wherever with a man who probably never had to Google how to make your wife feel appreciated. So I left. The drive back felt like moving through concrete. I turned off the music, turned off my phone, turned off every part of me that still wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. I was tired of giving her space to explain things that didn't make sense. I was done inventing noble reasons for why she forgot to text goodnight, or why her perfume smelled different, or why she smiled at her screen a little too long when she thought I wasn't looking. When I walked through the door, the house felt occupied. Her luggage was by the stairs, half unpacked. A silk blouse I'd never seen before was draped over the couch. Her shoes, the red ones with the ankle strap she said were too much for work, were kicked off near the fireplace like she had just walked in and melted into comfort. She was in the kitchen when I found her, casually stirring oat milk into her coffee like this was any other Sunday. I stood there for a second, watching her back, waiting for her to flinch, waiting for her to feel my eyes on her. She didn't. Finally, I spoke, voice hoarse, throat dry. "You left the dress." She turned around slowly, like I had just reminded her of a dentist appointment she forgot to cancel. "What?" "The one you spent 20 minutes spinning in front of the mirror in. It's still in the closet. You left in something else." There was a pause, a flicker of something in her eyes. Then she smiled, like I had pointed out she left her keys on the counter. "Oh, yeah, I changed last minute." That was it. No explanation. No curiosity about why I cared. No remorse in her tone. Just that stupid smile like I had interrupted her latte. I stepped closer. "Where did you stay Friday night?" She blinked. Just once. And it told me everything. It was the kind of blink people do when their brain needs half a second to build a lie. "Company hotel." "Which one?" She gave a name. I nodded, then held up the receipt. "That's weird. Because this says you checked into a place that doesn't have conference rooms. Or a restaurant. Or anything corporate." Her mouth opened, then closed. Like a fish. Like a person stalling for air. I pressed. "Was he there with you? Bryce?" She scoffed, tried to play it off. You're being paranoid, Howard. This is why I didn't tell you. You spiral. Do I? My voice cracked on that last part, and I hated myself for it. But something in her softened. Like she was watching a sick animal struggle and didn't know whether to help or put it down. Then she said it. The line I'll never forget. The one that broke something sacred. It's just a job, Howard. He respects me. He listens. Maybe if you spent less time baking bread and more time understanding what I need. I didn't hear the rest. All I remember is the sound of the mug hitting the sink, the way her voice echoed off the tiles, and the sudden, quiet awareness that she hadn't denied it. She never said no. And that silence? It was louder than any confession could have been. I didn't sleep that night either. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling in the dark, listening to the occasional creaks of the house like it was holding its breath. She had gone to bed like nothing happened. Like I hadn't just stood in our kitchen holding a receipt that could burn a hole through steel. I could hear her upstairs, brushing her teeth, opening drawers, climbing into bed that I refused to join. She didn't come down. She didn't say goodnight. And that silence wrapped around me like wet cement. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the blender. She was making a smoothie. Business as usual. Hair up in a bun, blazer pressed, gold earrings I hadn't seen before. I said nothing. Neither did she. Just the mechanical noise of the blender and the soft ding of a text coming through her phone that she flipped over quickly before I could glance. That was it. That was the moment I decided I wasn't going to play the quiet fool anymore. Later that day, I showed up at her office. I told myself I wasn't going to confront Bryce. I wasn't that guy. I didn't want to cause a scene, didn't want her to spin it into Howard embarrassed me at work. I just wanted to look at him, to see the man she was willing to burn our marriage for, to see if he looked like the type who laughed at small talk and said things like, let's circle back. But I never got to Bryce. Because instead, I ran into Mira, her coworker. The one she always said was too chatty and overshares on Slack. I knew of Mira, vaguely. We'd met once at the holiday party. She was the kind of woman who noticed everything and forgot nothing. I was counting on that. Howard, she said, clearly surprised to see me in the elevator. Everything okay? I smiled the way I imagine I do at funerals. Yeah, just dropping off something for Ellery. Oh, she's not in today. She took the day after the retreat off. I blinked. The retreat ended yesterday? She nodded. Yeah, well, the official one. Everyone left Sunday afternoon, but Bryce let the leadership team stay an extra night at the vineyard. You know, to relax. My jaw tightened. The leadership team? Yeah. She chuckled. Your wife's killing it, huh? Not everyone gets that invite. And just like that, Mira casually delivered the bullet that tore through my ribs. She didn't even know she'd done it. I thanked her, walked out, and sat in my car for almost 30 minutes, trying not to punch the steering wheel. She stayed longer than she said. She lied again. Casually. Easily. Effortlessly. When she finally came home later that evening, I was waiting in the garage, lights off, car off, door shut. She jumped a little when she saw me standing there, like she wasn't expecting to see me in our own house. That made two of us. I stopped by your office, I said. You weren't there? She hesitated only a second. I took a half day. I wasn't feeling well. I stared at her. She knew. She knew I knew. And still, she clung to the lie like it was a life raft. I wanted to scream, to throw every receipt, every sentence, every skipped heartbeat in her face. But all I said was, did he make you feel more important than I did? Her eyes darted away. That was enough. I didn't sleep in the house that night. I grabbed a bag, left without another word, and drove until the city lights vanished behind me. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get as far away from that woman as possible. But the worst part? Somewhere deep inside me, I still wanted her to call. I didn't have a plan when I left. I just drove. The highway was empty, long stretches of silence broken only by the low hum of my tires and the occasional thump of a song I didn't recognize on the radio. At some point, I ended up at a seedy motel about an hour and a half north, the kind of place where the check-in counter has a bell no one ever answers. The room smelled like bleach and old air conditioning, and the lamp beside the bed flickered when I turned it on. But I didn't care. I just needed a place that wasn't our house. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the cracked ceiling, my phone buzzed. I didn't want to look. I thought maybe, just maybe, it was Ellery finally texting to explain, or confess, or pretend to care. But it wasn't her. It was a message request on Facebook. From someone I didn't immediately recognize, Carmen Fields. The name felt distant, familiar in a foggy way. I clicked her profile, and after a few seconds it hit me. She used to work with Ellery at a different firm years ago. I'd only met her once, briefly, at a rooftop cocktail mixer Ellery dragged me to. Carmen was the one who spilled red wine on her white blouse and laughed it off like she'd done it 1,000 times. She had vanished from Ellery's work orbit soon after that, and I never heard her name again. Until now. The message was short. Howard, I know this is out of nowhere, but I think you need to know what happened in Portland. I was there. I didn't know you back then, and I didn't feel like it was my place to say anything. But after seeing her with Bryce again, I think you deserve the truth. Portland? I read the message 4 times. There was no punctuation at the end of her last sentence. It just cut off, like she got cold feet and hit send before she could change her mind. My hands were sweating as I typed back. What happened in Portland? No reply. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour. Nothing. I even tried checking her profile again, but it was private. No posts, no photos beyond the generic cover image of a pine forest. I messaged again, more desperate this time. Please. I need to know. Still nothing. I barely slept. My brain started spinning. What was she talking about? Portland was where Ellery went on a training conference a year after we got married. 3 nights at a fancy downtown hotel, all expenses paid by her company. She brought me back a souvenir mug with a moose on it and told me how boring the workshops were. That mug was still in our kitchen cabinet. I got out of bed and Googled the name of the hotel from that trip, scrolling through photos, maps, reviews. I didn't even know what I was looking for, some kind of clue, a familiar name. But then I found it, an archived company blog post from that week. A photo of the attendees. Group shot, 20 people in suits. There she was, Ellery, standing beside a man who was very clearly not Bryce. His hand was on her lower back. Not resting, gripping. The caption said, Executive Training Cohort, March 2019. His name was Zachary Lentz. I clicked him. Private profile. No mutual friends. But I found his LinkedIn. And that's when my stomach dropped. Current position, Regional VP of Strategy. Company, the same one Ellery just got promoted into. Location, San Francisco, transferred this year from Portland. Direct manager, Bryce Halpern. So now I was looking at 2 men. Not just one. And Ellery had worked under both. I sat there in that motel bed, lights buzzing above me, my hands ice cold. Realizing this wasn't an affair, it was a pattern, a timeline, a trail. And Carmen? She knew something that made her uncomfortable enough to reach out to me out of nowhere, years later, after Ellery had apparently repeated whatever she did in Portland. Right here. In my house. In our bed. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I didn't even know what I would have said if she answered. Maybe that I was tired of lies. Maybe that I couldn't tell where my wife ended and the mask began. Maybe that I wished I could rewind everything back to when I believed in soup and anniversary plans and inside jokes about dog parks. Instead, I sat there in that broken motel room, holding my phone in one hand and a glass of warm, motel-issue whiskey in the other, whispering to no one. Please don't let this be true. But deep down, I already knew it was. I didn't plan on staying another night in that motel. But after scrolling Carmen's profile one more time and rereading her cryptic message at least 20 times, I couldn't bring myself to drive home. If you could even call that place home anymore. That word used to mean something. Now it just meant walls and reminders, a closet full of lies and a bed full of shadows. At 3:14 in the afternoon the next day, my phone buzzed. I was eating stale peanut M&Ms from a vending machine when her name popped up. Carmen Fields sent you a voice message. Just the sight of it gave me chills. I almost didn't play it. Almost waited until I was back in the room with the door locked. But something about it pulled at me. So I hit play, standing right there in the open parking lot under the hazy sun, sweat on my neck, car engines buzzing nearby. I shouldn't have listened to it there. But I did. Her voice came through low and shaky. She was speaking fast, like she was trying to get it all out before her courage dissolved. Howard, I hope you don't hate me for this. I know it's not my place, and I've debated sending this for a long time. But I need to tell you what happened in Portland. Because Ellery didn't just have a fling there. It wasn't some one-night accident. It was a full-blown relationship. She and Zach, they weren't hiding it. Not at all. Everyone on that trip knew. They were sharing a room. There were jokes, Bryce was even there for part of it. I remember him walking in on them at the spa and pretending it was nothing. It was like everyone knew something you didn't. I paused the message. My hand was shaking so badly, I dropped my phone and had to fish it out from under a parked car. When I picked it up, my reflection in the screen looked like a man I didn't recognize. My face was pale, drawn, like the truth had taken a blade to it. I hit play again. I wanted to tell you back then, but she said you were fragile. That was her word. Fragile. She said you'd spiral and do something stupid, and I believed her. But when I saw her again last month with Bryce, the way she touched his arm in the elevator, the same look she gave Zach, I knew she was doing it again. I don't know if you'll believe me, but you need to. Please get out, before she erases whatever pieces of you are still whole. The message ended. Just like that. I stood there for a long time, phone gripped in my fist, the sun slowly baking through my shirt. I didn't cry. Not yet. What I felt was something colder than grief, darker than betrayal. It was like finding out the fire that burned your house down wasn't an accident. It was arson. Intentional. Repeated. Ellery hadn't just cheated. She'd used people. Recycled them. Climbed them. She had a system. A routine. Something surgical, calculated, repeatable. And now Bryce was just the next rung on her corporate ladder. But here's what haunted me most. It wasn't the sex. It wasn't even the lying. It was that everyone around her seemed to know what she was doing except me. Like I was the sad clown at the edge of the stage, thinking the spotlight was for him. I drove straight back home. Didn't call. Didn't text. I needed to see her face when I told her I knew everything. When I said Zach's name. When I quoted the word fragile, right back at her. But when I pulled into the driveway, her car was gone. At first, I thought maybe she was at work late. Or getting groceries. Or escaping. The paranoid part of me whispered that one. But then I noticed something that turned my stomach into glass. The front door was cracked open. Not unlocked, open. I pushed it wide and stepped inside. The house was quiet. Too quiet. And the suitcase by the stairs? Gone. The house was quiet in that eerie, cinematic way, the kind of silence that hums in your ears like pressure underwater. The front door hanging open, suitcase gone, and the hallway dark even though the sun hadn't fully set. At first, I didn't know what to do. My instinct was to call someone. The police? A friend? Marcus? But deep down, I knew this wasn't a crime scene. This was a choice. She left. Whether she was running, hiding, or simply moving on without the burden of confrontation, I couldn't say. And for the first few minutes, I was angry about that. After everything, after Carmen, after Zach, after Bryce, after all the lies, she didn't even give me the decency of closure. No argument. No screaming match. No last slap of honesty across the face. But then I realized maybe that was the closure. I walked through the house slowly, half expecting to find some dramatic letter or a broken frame. But there wasn't much. A few drawers were left open in our bedroom. Some clothes were gone. The bathroom was missing her serums and lavender candles. But most of her things, the things that once made this place ours, were still here. I stood at the foot of the bed and noticed something sitting on my nightstand. It was that stupid mug from Portland, the one with the moose on it. The one I used to drink out of on Sundays when we stayed in bed too long. There was a sticky note stuck to the handle. It read, "You deserved more than what I could be." That was it. No name. No signature. Just a truth I think she finally couldn't outrun. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at it until my eyes went blurry. And when the tears came, they didn't feel like failure or shame or rage. They felt like an exhale I'd been holding for years. It wasn't just about her. It was about who I became in the process of loving someone who could only love herself. I had bent, softened, adjusted, made excuses, and drowned out my own instincts in the name of patience and loyalty. And I was done with that version of me. The next few weeks were harder than I expected. I had to sort through bills, untangle accounts, return her unopened mail. I found myself replaying old conversations, overanalyzing texts, and sometimes waking up from dreams where we were still okay. But something else started to happen too. I started to breathe easier. Laugh at shows again. Cook for myself, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I started walking at night, just to hear the wind and remember that silence didn't have to hurt. Marcus checked in more often. Even Carmen messaged once or twice. Carefully, kindly, like she didn't want to intrude, but just needed me to know that someone was out there who had seen what I'd gone through. I thanked her. Not for the message, but for being the first person to believe that I didn't deserve to be left in the dark. And then, one Saturday morning, I met someone. Not on a dating app, not through friends, just at the park. I was sitting on a bench with coffee and a book I hadn't opened, watching some kid try to fly a too small kite. And she was walking her dog, a ridiculous, fluffy thing that looked like it belonged in a children's book. The dog jumped into my lap like it had known me in a past life. She apologized. I laughed. And just like that, it didn't feel like the end anymore. It felt like a beginning. Her name was Quinn. She wasn't flashy or intense or trying to be the most important person in the room. She asked questions. She listened. She laughed with her whole body. And when I told her about everything, not all at once, but eventually, she didn't flinch. She just said, "I'm glad you made it out." And I realized so was I.